Good morning, Facebook. Just making sure. Morning, Instagram. We're live here on Instagram. I think Facebook is officially up and running as well. Yep, we are live on both ends here. So, morning, team. Happy Friday. It's always good to head into the weekend. Up here in Michigan, where I'm at, we got snow. It's the real deal. We're headed in towards winter here too. So, hopefully we have good positive vibes going into the weekend though. But this is your PT on Ice Daily Show. I'm your host, Joe Hanisco. I'm a member of the clinical management, the fitness athlete team. And today we'll be discussing the jump in Olympic lifting. So a couple different things on what the purpose of that jump is, what it actually looks like. Is it necessary? Is it not necessary? We're going to cover all things the jump in Olympic lifting, talk about what we might see in terms of positive benefits of it, but also faults when people are trying to perform this maybe incorrectly, and then kind of wrap it up with some good conclusions as well. But before we dive into that, let's go over some of the coursework we have with ICE coming up. So as we head into the end of the year, often a lot of our live courses are going to start wrapping up. We got Thanksgiving coming, got Christmas holiday. Things get pretty busy, and we understand that you guys need to put some time into your families and some personal life. So we hold back a little bit. So live courses for us are kind of on a hold off now until January, but we're going to hit it hard in January. It looks like our modern management, the older adult team, is crushing it January. They got a course up in Michigan over in Fenton where Mitch and Alan are at. They have a course down in Tennessee with Alexis and Zach Morgan down there at their gym at CrossFit Hendersonville. And then I think they're over in Pennsylvania as well. That's all within the month of January. So hop on ptonice.com, look for some of those specific dates if those are in your area. The spine team, I think lumbar is going over to South Carolina, Greenville. That's where Cody and Jess are. They have Onward, Greenville over in South Carolina. So January, we're getting right back after it again, but live courses until then are kind of on a lull, which perfectly fine. We're okay with that. In terms of online courses, the Essentials Fitness Athlete course is kicking off December 6th, I believe. So if you haven't gotten in on that, it's a fantastic course. We get into all things fitness there. It's a great little introductory course, but you're going to get some awesome content there. We got Mitch, Alan, I think Kelly and Guillermo are all part of that team as well. So fantastic course coming in December. Another cohort there. And then January we have pregnancy and postpartum, the fitness athlete course coming January. Modern management, the older adult essentials is coming January online, and then injured runner is coming in January as well. So December a little bit, January we got tons of stuff coming at you guys. So hop on ptonice.com, take a look, see what we have available, see what we can do about getting you guys on this PT 2.0 track, and we're happy to be the leaders moving forward with that. So let's get into the jump, the Olympic lifting jump. So when we talk about the jump, it's a movement that occurs towards the end of the Olympic lift. So we're talking snatches and cleans here, in which an athlete will create maximum power and force, sometimes seeing elevation to the feet, just like what we would see if we asked them to do a vertical jump, which allows them to not only create power and force, but also we can talk about creating a change of direction with that jump. So before I really get into the jump, though, let's go over some of the specific lifts. The beauty of them, that the clean and the snatch, when I talk about these things, are going to be pretty synonymous. So when we talk about Olympic lifting, the first movement, the first chunk of movement we talk about is the first pull. So picture somebody in relatively a similar setup to a deadlift setup, although technically we're going to see them a little bit more of a squatty deadlift setup. That first pull occurs from when the barbell is still connected to the floor to about the tops of that knee, or that transition point around the knee. So here we term that first pull as we pull from the floor. The second pull occurs from the knee to the hip. We transition by pulling that barbell really close into our body, almost scraping up the front of our thigh. Some things will be occurring with our torso, where we come from more of a over the bar position to more of a vertical torso position throughout that second pull. But the second pull starts around the knee and it ends right around that power position, which is a position that is a staple in Olympic lifting, where the knees are still slightly flexed, the hips still slightly flexed, maybe a little bit, but the torso and the hip angle is relatively vertical here. But there's still power and room, some kinetic energy built up, that we could create a triple extension, which is a violent extension of the body from ankles, knees, and hips going straight through the floor, even the spine going into a little bit of extension. That's that triple extension that occurs right after or right through that transition point of the second pull. So first pull, floor to knee. Second pull, knee to power position, or knee to hip, in that hip angle there. going right into the triple extension. And then the third pull, actually, if we really think about what that is, it's more or less the ability of an athlete to pull themselves underneath the bar. So if we think about what's occurring during the Olympic lift, we're trying to create maximum power and vertical force on that bar. At some point, physics will say that that bar no longer is going up. It also really isn't coming down. There's that moment, that snapshot in time when that barbell is essentially hovering in the air there, and that becomes a fixed object. You have 100, 200, 300 pounds in that bar. This allows athletes to actually actively pull themselves underneath the bar onto the receiving position, whether we're talking about a clean or a snatch. It doesn't really matter at that point. But that third pull is actually more or less the ability for that athlete to pull themselves underneath the bar and then complete the lift with a good receiving position, whether it was in a power position, meaning not a squat, or a full squat position with the clean or the snatch there. So first pull, second pull, triple extension in that transition phase, third pull, pulling underneath the bar. So when does this jump happen? That jump, in my mind, the best way to kind of look at it is what's occurring right toward the very end of that triple extension. So the athlete is getting as tall as they can, extending hips, extending knees, pressing into the floor, and you may see with those mechanics elevation of the feet and a jump that occurs. And sometimes it's even coached that you should be thinking about a powerful jump of that barbell up with you and your body. So this all makes perfect sense. If we're looking to create maximum ground reaction forces and even a little bit of space, where that little bit of space is sometimes helpful in thinking when an athlete is trying to pull themselves in that third pull underneath the bar, that little bit of negative space allows them that momentary time to kind of create a gap between them and the floor where they can dive down underneath that bar, giving them a little bit more of a bandwidth to receive that bar in good position there. So that jump is necessary, but I think sometimes what we see is that it gets misunderstood or misinterpreted, and that's what I really wanted to talk about. So, if we have questions about this, you throw comments in there, we can talk about it a little bit more. I sort of wanted to briefly talk about those positional things. That was just a quick overview, but let's go into the jump more specifically here. So I get asked a lot of times, with that jump, how high should that jump be? Should we actually be seeing space, like their feet coming off of the floor and creating a gap between the floor? And I really think that just depends on who you're talking to. If you look at some of the world's best, like Olympic athletes, people who were on the stage in Tokyo not too long ago, you're going to see a variety of space differences between their feet. A lot of the U.S. athletes and some of the other countries are taught to jump aggressively and maybe create a little bit of space there, but then the Chinese Olympic lifting team is maybe one of the best, if not the best out there. Their jump is more of small amount of space, very powerful, very hard jump, small amount of space, and then getting their feet outwards rather than just straight upwards to kind of create an optimal position for receiving the barbell in a squat position, for example there. So I don't necessarily know that there is one specific type of jump that we're looking for. We just need to make sure that our athletes are creating maximum force, and if that means that they're able to produce some vertical height in that jump, as long as all the other mechanics are leading up to that in pretty good standards, then I think we're okay with space there. But also, if we see an athlete who hits all these major milestones with the first pull, second pull, triple extension, and then their jump is just minimal, to the point where you could barely pass a piece of paper under there, but they do a really good job at separating their feet and getting underneath the bar, then that's okay too. I don't think there's a standard that we're looking for here, and you might see variety, but I think consistency with an athlete is the key, not that we are constantly trying to make all of our athletes perform these lifts similarly. So in the how high question with that jump, I don't necessarily know that there's a great answer for that. So I think we need to look at the athlete move and then determine whether or not they're hitting their performance markers, and then determine whether that height of their jump is necessary or not. So the other thing that I get a lot with the jump is that when we jump up in the air and land on the ground, we get a stomp or a smack. And in Olympic lifting, that audible, tangible reward is something that people are often seeking. They want to hear that stomp of their feet on that platform. You get your lifting shoes, those nice flat platform shoes, you get it on a platform, like a wood backdrop on that. When you jump and land on that, you hear that audible stomp, and people just get super stoked about that. And that's great, because with a jump, it should be a very aggressive downward force of your feet back underneath the bar. It should be very intentional. You should be very stable in your foot position. And a lot of times, when done correctly, we'll get that stomp. But looking for an artificial stomp of just pick your feet up and put them down aggressively to hear that stomp, that may not be exactly what we're looking for in terms of performance, although the audible, tangible noise is there. So that's something that we have to kind of pick up on with athletes. I've had a lot of people come to me who are specifically looking to create that jump and that stomp, but yet they've missed a lot of the other milestones along the way, which at that point I would say negates their performance benefit of creating that jump and that stomp there. So the same thing with barbell contact. We hear it all the time with that sweet sound of that ricochet of that bar off of that sweet spot in our hip crease. Like, we want that, but often what that means is that athletes are seeking the noise, and they're going to do whatever they can, which tends to be a lot of times faulty mechanics where they're throwing their hips at the bar and creating a more of a violent hip thrust into the bar. Yes, there's the audible, tangible noise that they get, but that's not really necessarily what we're looking for. When all things come perfectly up to that point and we get the noise of the ricochet of the bar or we get that stomp of our feet, then fantastic, we've met our marks there. But I think just looking for those audible noises are not necessarily confirmation that that jump was performed correctly, or like I brought up, that the barbell path and the contact point was made appropriate at that point either. So height doesn't necessarily matter, mechanics matter, and sound, I would say, matters, but doesn't necessarily matter if we're doing it inappropriately or incorrectly. So we got to think about those things, and especially in the fast-growing population of Olympic lifters and CrossFit athletes, when they're watching YouTube videos, they're watching these athletes, they're seeing these things. Like, let's make sure that they're performing them correctly rather than just seeking out something that they're seeing or hearing or being told that they should be hearing or seeing in those movements there. So faults with the jump. A couple of things that I think I run across regularly with faults, and to be honest, I guess a lot of these are probably going to link together, but the main fault that I see when people are trying to perform the jump is that they get really excited about the jump, and what happens, or what tends to happen, is that they miss some of the most crucial milestones, and the first one being triple extension. Triple extension is probably one of the most important things in producing force. I could care less if your feet leave the ground if you get awesome triple extension. That needs to come first. So again, that triple extension is plantar flexion into the floor, so pushing through their foot and through the toe eventually as we come to that final portion of it. Our knees are extending, so we're getting great quad activation. Our hips are extending. We're even seeing a little bit of a backward angle of that torso, or an extension of the torso. That triple extension produces maximum force and maximum upward velocity of that barbell, and we need that more than ever. So this next little fault of jumping too early often comes because the athlete is looking to perform that jump, get their feet off the floor, but they haven't yet hit the full triple extension. So you could tie those two in there, lacking triple extension and or performing the jump early. But I get a lot of athletes who I see literally as they're sweeping the bar in to that power position on that second pull, at some point they start to pull with their arms, their feet are coming off the ground, they're literally flexing their knees and their hips, which is exactly the opposite of what we're trying to do as we work towards triple extension, and that jump is just there as a jump. And a lot of times these people get pretty significant distance in their feet off of the floor, but that's not because they're creating maximum force through the floor. They're literally just flexing their knees and bringing their knees towards their hamstring or towards their butt. That early jump is just not effective at producing force, and often then leads to lack of triple extension. So fault number 1 and number 2, I think they're kind of synonymous and they go together. We just need to be aware of the fact that triple extension may be probably one of the most important things that we're obtaining throughout that lift, and you can't get triple extension if you're jumping early. That's just impossible to do. The other thing that we'll see sometimes is that the jump, rather than being vertical upwards, if they are creating the jump, is more of a forward jump. Again, this one is tricky because often the outcome of jumping forward isn't truly because the athlete is jumping forward. It's that something in their movement, like an early pull or a poor bar path, that gets that bar away from them. It's almost pulling them forward. If you go into the air, if I just lift you in the air and I throw 185 pounds out in front of you and you're hanging onto that bar, it's going to yank you forward. So that jump will be forward. And really that's the outcome. We see the forward jump, but we often have to look back at the rest of the movement and say, what is it about that movement that led to this athlete jumping forward? It may not have been that they physically were leaping, jumping forward, but that something pulled them to that direction. So lacking triple extension, definitely number 1 on my fault list with the jump. An early jump, which can lead to lacking triple extension, or tied together, number 2. And then number 3 is that forward jump. And that forward jump is something that often takes fine tuning, in that there is little details along the way that we have to work on. But you might see an athlete get pretty decent triple extension, but yet still have a forward jump for different reasons. Like I said, there could be 5 or 6 or 10 different reasons that happens. So it's not just a clean sweep. They're jumping forward because they're jumping forward. It's probably something that's leading to them jumping forward there. So what do we ideally want in Olympic lifting, and how do we include this jump in there? So ideally, I think we can all agree that triple extension is super important. Max ground reaction force, so max force through the ground, an aggressive triple extension, get as tall as we can, and then we get small. That's a great cue that we use a lot. Get tall and then get small. If we're fully triple extended and then we are able to create a jump, for an example, that allows us to get smaller, come under or pull ourselves underneath that bar, then I think we can all agree that that's what we're looking for. Now, what happens with the feet in that position? Was there this much distance? Was there that much distance? I don't think that we need to get hung up on that. So let's look for max forces and triple extension. The feet may leave the ground to some extent, and that's perfectly fine, but that's not necessarily, that's something that I think we're all going to agree has to be an equal thing there. Also, I think it's important to know that the jump doesn't necessarily mean that we are just jumping up and straight up into the air with our feet. I think that no matter who we look at, for the most part, you're going to see an up and outward movement of the feet. We think about the purpose of the jump and the triple extension is to get that bar accelerating upwards so that we can then receive the barbell in a power position or back into a full squat position. In order to do that, our feet probably have to separate a little bit to create optimal stance for our squat. So it's an up and slightly out movement. We often will see people coach and cue that I've seen drills where they'll put two 45-pound plates with about a hip width stance in between, the distance between, and they're getting athletes to jump up and then land on those plates slightly outward. So it's an up and out movement. So I think we can all agree that triple extension and maximum force through the ground is important. I think we can agree that if that occurs, and we've checked those milestones, that if the feet leave the ground 2 centimeters, 2 inches, or 4 inches, that's okay, and that might depend on the athlete. There could be a lot of variables that go into that, but we've already accomplished the most important thing of that max force and that triple extension. And I think we could agree that the jump doesn't necessarily just have to be straight vertical. In fact, it should probably have some upward and outward movement there. So, when this topic came up to me, it's just been something that I've been working on with several athletes or been asked questions about this, and I kind of started to dive into it, and I think it's a pretty good summary of what we're looking for there. So, depending on who you are, where you're at in your lifting career, or who your coaches are, you may get different cues, different recommendations, but if we can understand that those little ideal things that we just discussed are probably equivalent across the board no matter who you talk to, then it's okay that we can agree to disagree on little variants or differences there. So hopefully that was helpful. I also opened up the door to a lot of other things, Olympic lifting, between barbell path with the first, second pull, the triple extension, the third pull, opened up some different things there, that's great conversation. Also great little, reason to dive into our essentials courses, our advanced courses in the fitness athlete, or even come to a live course. We'll discuss that more. We covered, the height of a jump and whether that's important. We covered that stomp and that noise and whether that's important, which the height may or may not be important. The stomp may or may not be important, but we know what is important is that we are creating some of these foundational movements like triple extension no matter what. And I think ultimately just piecing this together is just good information, at least good conversation started. So I'm interested to see what other people think about this. Throw some comments down below. Have a great weekend. I'm signing off. We'll talk to you guys soon. Hang in there and have great holidays. We'll see you later.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptionice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.